7.
How dare you!
You have stolen my childhood with your honest reviews, and my controller is the best. I will be disliking you till the end.
How dare you!
What?
That speech reflects the growing public outrage.
Not again! What's up YouTube? Welcome to Roman Does Consumer Tips, and today we're looking at quite a few controllers for Nintendo Switch. And this on me is not a parachute, it's not a backpack, this is Woojer. If you want to know what Woojer is, this is a haptic response vest, and the rest I'll tell you about it in my next video. So make sure you hit that subscribe and like button to keep up to date with the video when it comes out. But going back to the controllers, I scavenged them from all corners of Amazon with one sole purpose: to find out if the cheaper ones are worth it and if they're comparable to the more expensive ones. And the results are actually interesting. Here's the price range for all the controllers that I have on my desk right now. So let's see what works and what doesn't. On the first side, all these controllers are identical to each other, more or less, and you would expect them to function in about the same manner. But is it so? Let's find out. So the first on my list is the Split Pad Pro by Hori. This is a licensed Nintendo product. This is not a third-party random item. So it's definitely been looked at by Nintendo, and that's how it looks like on the box. It's easily available at Walmart and many other retailers, including Amazon. And one of the key features of this Joycon or Pad Pro, it has additional triggers at the back, as well as it provides you a full controller experience in your hands when playing in a handheld mode. The rear triggers are also programmable, and we'll try to see if it actually works. On the box it looks bright red, but actually when you take it out of the box, it looks slightly dull. It's definitely darker red than what we see on the box, but let's ignore the color and see how it works instead. So to mount them, same as with the original ones, see how nicely they come out? While these guys, they slide in just fine, but when you take them out, they're slightly harder to pull. These controllers, they're charged the same way as the original controllers by Nintendo, and they're pretty easy to connect since they're using the same technology as the original Joy-Cons. One of the first things you'll notice when you pick this up is that console became bigger, and not because of the screen, but actually because of the real estate on the side here. And it feels comfortable to press those additional triggers with your middle fingers. It's a large button that you cannot miss. Everything else is standard or somewhat standard. The button press is surprisingly good, but it's actually when you start playing with it, you'll find a few things. First, it has no vibration response. None of it. Why? I have no idea. And it makes it difficult or impossible to play in pretty much every game I tried. I'm a big fan of the Mario, and latest games, they require the vibration to be there just to sense certain things in the world and to find any hidden objects. Well, it will be impossible with this exact Joy-Con. So if you are playing Mario, just scrap it, this is not for you. The thumbsticks are somewhat lazy on these controllers. And by that I mean they're not as responsive as the original ones from the original Joy-Cons, which makes you move them around a bit more than what you would naturally done with the original controllers. And it simply could be the type of games you're playing in it, but for me, I like that precise, as little as possible movement, so these ones are definitely not for me. Additionally, if you have any of the travel cases that are somewhat standard, these guys will not fit inside. You see how big they are? That means you'll either need to buy a brand new case or find another way of carrying your new Joy-Cons separately from the rest of the system, which could be a hassle, especially if you're traveling. Therefore, on today's list, the HoriPad Pro goes to the good idea but poorly implemented bucket, right there. The next controller on my list is a wireless controller for NSL, whatever that stands for. This thing is apparently very popular on Amazon, and of course I had to test it. Let's have a look. This is how it looks like. It comes in a variety of colors, so you can choose pretty much any colors they have on Amazon. Of course, this is some random controller from China, not affiliated with any system, so it can be used pretty much with any console as long as you can pair it up together with it. On the first sight, it actually looks pretty comfortable, and in fact it is. It reminds me of one of the older PlayStation controllers, but with slightly better grip on the handles here. And they're also like rubberized or something like that, so this place here, it feels like super grippy, which is great. As well as the thumbsticks, they're rubberized as well, which is not always standard on the cheaper controllers. The triggers are great on it, the bumpers are there as well, and they're pretty good and usable. So the overall like sensation to the controller is pleasing, especially for its price point. Let's power it up and see what happens. So it did well with the fishing test. It was responsive enough, and it allowed me to catch some fish with the vibration it provides. There it is, vibration works. And the overall vibration response is soft and nice on this controller. The problem with this controller starts when you are in a game that requires that vibro response from the world, and specifically in this scenario right here on the screen, I am supposed to find the object underground, relying solely on the vibration. And this is where this controller lacks the most, because it has either on or off condition for the vibration, and makes it impossible to navigate that specific sweet spot where the Mario is supposed to find an object, unlike with the original Joycons. Plus, listen to this vibration. You can hear it right there. Let me bring it closer. All the buttons are trembling and vibrating, so it's not as nice. Let's test it with the original Joycons. Here in the game with the original Joycons, it starts vibrating as I slowly start approaching the place. That's where the vibration tells me exactly where I have to jump. While with this controller, it would start vibrating way over here and would definitely not be helpful. In this scenario on the screen, I see where the object is, but there are scenarios in Mario where you don't see it and you solely rely on the vibration. So let's sum it up. This controller, for the price point, is doing its job pretty well. I like the overall rubbery grip that reminds me older PlayStation controllers with slightly better texture and better curvature on the sides. The triggers are great, the thumbsticks are awesome and very responsive, and the buttons and everything else works great. The only downside for this controller is the vibration, but if you're playing any of the games that don't require that level of sensitivity like the original Joy-Cons provide, then this could be a great choice, especially if you're on a budget and looking for a reliable controller. So this I definitely recommend, but it still needs a bit work on the vibration. Other than that, I think this is a pretty good controller. It's decent and well priced. The next on my list is Stoga Wireless Pro Game Controller for SWH, whatever that stands for. It's a weird controller, as you can see it from the shape on the picture, and it feels just as weird when you touch it with your hands. It's so ugly and unpresentable that it actually makes it quite good, you know, like it fits the hands properly. Again, I have pretty big hands, so if you're on the smaller side, I guess this might be not the best choice for you, but for me it fits pretty well. The first thing you'll notice when you start using it are the triggers. They are massive here, they're huge, look at them. So you have to press a lot harder and more to activate them. The bumpers are okay. The thumbsticks, they are similar to what Hori provides here. They are large, they are responsive, but not responsive enough. Not like on one of these, and definitely nothing close to the original Joy-Cons. Let's play some game with it. So as I mentioned earlier, it's weird to be held in the hands when you're not used to it, and it gets better over the time. But one of the things you'll notice immediately are not even the massive triggers that you have to press harder. Surprisingly, at the end of the day, they work pretty well and do their job. Thumbsticks, they're not as responsive as you would expect them to be. Not too bad, but they're not great either. Same as with every other controller we tested so far. Vibration is what kills this controller. Just listen to it. It's about 2 feet away now. Now let's listen to it closer. You hear it? Same as with this controller over here, it doesn't have that grading of the vibration. So if you're in a situation where you have to find things by vibration, again, it's not gonna work for you just like with the previous controller. And this vibration is massive, like it's shaking my hands. I feel like if I will be holding this thing for like a couple of hours straight and you know, having all this vibration going through, my hands will be shaken by the end of the day. Oh, here's that. That's how strong it is. So it's definitely on the cheaper side, and if you're looking for a budget version, maybe go for this one. A great attempt by someone, and I was quite surprised when I saw the USB-C charging port, because for this price point normally the devices are still charged with the micro USB. So my final verdict for this controller, it goes to the right section here, into the bucket with the things that still need some kind of work done on them. Our next controller is coming from the Stoga brand again, and I actually had a lot of hopes for this controller because I love it, and they have so many different shapes and sizes it comes in. Just have a look on Amazon, it's amazing. I picked this Panda controller because it reminds me of my cat, and just look at it, it's amazing. It's just like on a picture. And I have to say is that even though the idea behind it and the comfort and the grip are pretty good, even for large hands, even though it's made for kids, the thumbsticks are horrible on this thing. They're tiny and they're plastic. They also have this weird shape on the triggers that definitely make it interesting to use and hold your fingers around, because it also provides the additional support when you're holding the controller. But then, same as with this previous Stoga controller and the one before that, it's lacking the vibration response. Like, it's absolutely uncontrollable when you're trying to reach a place and navigate based on the vibration. However, it feels like they tried to make the responsive vibration on this controller series. It kind of starts and stops, while the previous ones, this one was just like vibrating non-stop. Vibration motor in this thing is probably not as strong as in the other model, so the overall vibration is a bit more pleasant, if you can say that, and when it vibrates, that's how loud it is. All the buttons and everything else vibrates together with the controller, but I find that the buttons, you know, the control buttons here on the Joycon, they're not as responsive, and sometimes you end up missing the certain actions because simply response is not there. So if you're looking for a controller for your kids and the level of vibration and details is not as necessary for them as it is for me playing this game, this definitely could be something nice and cute for them to be using on a daily basis. I'm not sure about the longevity of this controller, taking into account that all these triggers are sticking out, so if you drop it in some weird position, there's a big chance that you might break one of the buttons. I think this controller has the potential for the smaller kids, and I'll keep it on my left side with the things that are somewhat usable for Nintendo Switch, even though definitely I would not buy it again for myself to use. This next one is weird but interesting. It's called GameSir. What a weird name. And the model of it is GameSir T4 Pro. So this is a Pro version of the controller, and this company does actually quite a few things, and you'll see a lot of products that they produce being sold on Amazon. It comes with the 4 editable buttons. What they meant here are programmable buttons. It has the 6-axis gyro, and speaking of gyro, it's available on every controller we have here. So gyro is here, gyro available here, and gyro available here. One note about gyro though, it's not as responsive on the Stoga controllers as on every other controller we have tested today. So back to the GameSir. Let's look at the back. Even one small level of details, the sticker you see that they used to seal the box bears their logo, so definitely somebody spends and invests some money on this brand. First of all, it tells us that it's compatible with the iOS, Android, Windows, Switch, and pretty much anything you can pair it with, same as with the other controllers, but this is the only one that comes with quite a few things in the package with the controller. Unlike the other ones that come with the charge wire and nothing else, this one comes with, first of all, USB dongle to connect it to your computer. Of course, the charging cable, same as like everyone else, but on this one they even have the branding, their logo on the USB plug. And it comes with this additional holder for your cell phone, so you can mount your cell phone on this controller, just like that. and you can play games right here, right? So this is definitely a great controller if you're traveling, if you want to play games on your cell phone, on your Switch, and everything else in between. For the price point, I think it's pretty good. So let's put this all back, see what else is in the box. Inside they have the extended warranty card. For 6 months you have to scan it and fill in some details. Really thick and massive manual. A lot of details about the manual, all possible languages, some QC card here. They even give you the stickers, so you can put it all over your computer or wherever you want to put it, because why not? It's GameSir after all. And this thing, thank you card from CEO of the company, Yao Ma, and there's his signature. Yeah, so pretty interesting. Some interesting brand from China, and they definitely try to treat it like one of the premium brands. And I don't see why not, because the overall impression of the controller, once you start looking at it, is pretty good. It's very similar to the Nintendo's Pro controller. It's transparent, made of a similar plastic. It's about as heavy as the original Nintendo's controller. Here it is. But in terms of the shape, this one looks more like Xbox controller, while this one has more of a Nintendo Switch design slash Stadia controller by Google. We'll talk about this controller in a second. So with GameSir, as they mentioned, they have 2 programmable buttons on each side of the controller. Even though it's 1 button, there are 2 places where you can press it. 1, 2, 1, 2. So 4 buttons that you can program separately on this controller and use those buttons for whatever you wish. But one of the cool features that none of the other controllers have here, shown earlier or not shown yet, is backlight. There it is. See, all the buttons, they light up, light around the thumbstick on the right, and it definitely looks great and premium like when it's powered on. Let's try to play some games. So when it comes to gaming, it's pretty standard to every other controller we have tested so far. It's great at certain things and it's not as great at certain vibrations, but what I noticed that the gyro response on this controller is great. You need to barely move the controller and you already see the character being activated on the screen. So that's definitely a big plus, because I didn't show it to you earlier, but on the Stoga controllers here, you really have to put some force into it and shake the controller. While with this one, I can just barely move it and it already has the action on the screen. As I mentioned, same as with the other controllers, what it's lacking is vibration again. So when you reach those certain places where you need to find things with the vibration, same as with the other controllers I've shown you earlier, it has only 1 speed for the vibration. And I'm not sure why they never thought about it. Like, they put so many features into this controller, and I think this would be a great replacement price-wise and overall for the Pro controller by Nintendo. But for whatever reason, the vibration still doesn't work well. Even though the overall build quality is definitely on the premium side. Even when it vibrates, it's not as loud and it doesn't shake the entire thing, and the buttons don't tremble. That's how loud it is. So my verdict is, it's definitely a better controller than this one over here. And I think the overall button responses and everything else is pretty good. Like, you can control and manipulate your game in pretty much authentic way as you would with the Pro controller from Nintendo. With only downside of the vibration working not as intended. Controller is definitely great for the games that don't require that level of vibration detail. And if you're looking for a good and quality, reliable third-party controller, I think this is a solid choice right here. Especially if you're looking at all the additional features it comes with, like phone holder, the USB dongle to easily connect it to your computer, and all that. So we place this controller here on the left side with all the promising controllers. Next on my list is another Hori wireless controller, or as they call it, HoriPad, which I think is really bad marketing here, because it's definitely on a Hori side compared even to the cheaper models we looked at before. Inside the box you don't really get anything else except from the charging cable. It tells you here that it can work from 10 meters apart from your console, and the battery should last you for about 20 hours of work. There is accelerometer, gyroscope built into the thing. And yes, it does work, it's responsive, but not as responsive as what GameSir provides here for lower price. The overall look of the controller kind of looks like a Xbox controller, but a lot lighter. Somehow these controllers by Hori are very light. I find it not too pleasant to hold it because you want to have a little bit of weight in your hands when you're holding the controller. The thumbsticks on this thing are way too extended out and make the motion range like too big for the console, and I don't think it's initially made like that because the original Joycon thumbsticks, they're like on a tiny little leg and they create that smooth and soft motion that this controller cannot provide. So it's practically identical to the shorter version of the Hori controller we looked at earlier. But that's not the worst. The worst part about this controller, it costs pretty much like the Pro controller by Nintendo. However, it has no vibro response whatsoever, just like the shorter version as well. That really stumbles me here because, like, why not? You would want to have that vibration in your hands when you're playing the games, and I don't think there's any game out there that is not made for the vibro response from the game world. And especially in cases like Mario here, you will not be able to play the game while the cheaper controllers provide at least some kind of vibration. With this one, you will not be able to achieve even that level of gameplay that you can with the cheaper controllers. It's also a little bit shaky. So all these buttons in the centers, they're kind of on the cheaper side and definitely don't add any quality sensation to this controller whatsoever. Even the GameSir has the better buttons. The gyro response on this controller is also not as great. You have to shake it a lot harder than, for example, the GameSir, and that really makes it bad. So with that said, the buttons are not too bad, like they're big buttons. I like big buttons on the controllers. Triggers are pretty good as well, but there's no vibration. I also see a lot of resemblance here with the original Pro controller, and I think they're trying to fool you to buy the slightly cheaper version of the Hori controller. It's definitely nowhere close to even the GameSir controller that does a lot more for a lower price. They pretty much copied the location of the connection indicators here. The overall design at the top somewhat looks alike. Even the texture of the grip is somewhat similar. This thing goes to the right section with every other controller that still needs work and should be avoided altogether. And as you expected, this is the last and the most expensive controller on my list. This is the original Nintendo Switch Pro controller, and let's see if it's any better than any of my earlier presented controllers for half or even less price. The packaging is very simple on this controller, there's nothing else inside except for the wire, and here is the controller itself. It's made in this partially transparent plastic all over the place and it definitely has some weight to it. Additionally, the grips, even though they're plastic, they do have this nice texture that doesn't slip out from your hands easily. When you play in the games, let's see how responsive it is. Thumbsticks, they're on the longer side as well, compared to the original Joycon, but not as tall as the Hori's controller on the other hand here. Now, when you play in the games with the Pro controller, the vibration is exactly where it's supposed to be. So the vibro motors, they're properly made on the Pro controller. Then the overall response to the buttons is pretty good. I cannot really complain about it. And these side buttons, they're big enough for you to press. So if you have larger hands, it's easier for you to press these buttons than the buttons on the original Joycon. The gyro, however, it's not as responsive as what GameSir provides, but it's actually pretty good as well. Like, it's natural there, it's not too bad, it's not too great. I would say it's decent, it's great. So definitely GameSir did better gyro response. I have no idea how they achieved that. Maybe it's actually a cheaper part. Maybe that's how it's not supposed to be. No idea, but I personally preferred the gyro response from this controller to the Pro controller. The original controller also has several different layers of the vibrations there, so when you're jumping and landing, for example, it vibrates in one way, when you're doing other things it vibrates in another way, and that's I think how the game was intended originally. But now my main question is this controller worth it? Yes, if you're playing on TV, maybe you want something bigger to play with than the original Joy-Cons, but I think the original Joy-Cons are more than enough for Nintendo Switch. Yes, I'm gonna get some haters now saying that I'm idiot, I'm stupid, and I don't understand anything about how it should be played, but I think this is the best way to actually play games on Nintendo Switch. just two separate Joy-Cons. Make sure you wear the strap, and really like the response and everything works great on this thing. All the vibration, actually vibration is better on the original Joy-Cons than on the Pro Controller. Responsiveness to the button press and everything else is better on the Joy-Con, I think. With the only minor downside that the buttons are tiny, and again, if you have larger hands, it's pretty hard to play with. So if Shaquille O'Neal is watching my videos, then Shaq, these controllers are not for you, go for something bigger, go for a Pro Controller instead. At least you would be able to press the buttons.
How do you feel about this little guy?
Well, I'm not gonna say it's the worst one.
Of the two?
Of the two, I will probably give this a 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10 for this.
And since Switch already comes with this original holder for your Joy-Cons, it really creates a great and awesome controller altogether that really nothing can beat. I would recommend to anyone who is on a budget and looking at buying the additional controller, just avoid it, guys. You don't need any of these controllers as long as you have this. This is all you need. But then if you still need the additional controller, maybe consider the GameSir or one of these generic wireless controllers. My final verdict, yes, this is the original hardware for Nintendo. It works good, it works pretty well, and as intended, definitely goes on the left side with all the good stuff. And it's probably, because of the vibration, it's probably one of the better controllers that we tested today. But I think the GameSir controller comes pretty close, and if they fix the vibration response to work as it does on original Nintendo controllers, I think Nintendo got a problem there. Now, before I sum up this video, let's make sure you hit that like and the subscribe button and the bell icon below. Let's tickle those YouTube algorithms and help other people find this video, as I think it would be helpful to many folks just like yourself. Now back to the controllers. As we discovered, the price and brand don't really matter that much when you're buying an additional controller for your Nintendo Switch, but what matters is the vibration response, the built-in gyro, and the overall tactile feel of the controller. And with that said, I have to say that all the Hori controllers turned out to be horrible. Maybe that's why the entire brand is called Hori, but definitely avoid them, they're not worth it, and they're on the mid to higher range of the price scale here. At the same time, try to avoid any of the random controllers just like this one, since many of them are poorly made and the overall longevity of this controller are questionable. How long will it last? Then we covered some of these funny shaped controllers by the same company, by the way, who makes one of these. And I can tell you that if you're buying it for the kids, this could be a good choice, as long as your kids are careful with their toys. Then we have one of these controllers that I prefer to like most of this on the table. And for its price, I think it does pretty good job. It feels solid and well built. Definitely something that any user on a budget should check out. Then we have the Pro Controller, the original Pro Controller by Nintendo, and to be honest, I'm slightly disappointed because for the price point, it's not really worth it. Yes, it's not as expensive as the Pro Controllers for Xbox, let's say, but still, I personally feel like the original Joy-Cons that come with the Nintendo Switch are doing job just fine. And the only reason why I would choose the Pro Controller by Nintendo over, let's say, the GameSir, which I really liked, is the vibration. But if your games don't require that specific tactile, precise vibration, then maybe GameSir is actually a great alternative, because it can be paired with a lot of other devices, it has great sensors built into it for the gyro, and the overall features, even that additional hook for the cell phone, are definitely a plus. So it's unbeatable at its price point across all these controllers, except for the Pro Controller and of course the original Joy-Cons. Here's a quick Roman score for all these controllers. And on that note, I'll see you again. Make sure you're subscribed, because some cool videos coming out shortly. See you soon.